Hello guys, Haunted May 13 here, back with another video, this time for UFC Fight Night, Hill versus Rountree. Now I've got to be honest, this card might be one of my favourite ones of all the fight nights this year. All the fights are intriguing to me on the main card. And we're going to start with the first one. Mohamed Naimov versus Bogdan Grad. Now Naimov might be the biggest cheater in the UFC. He might even beat Michael Chandler for that record because he's so bad with cheating. What he did to Nathaniel Wood, I'll never forgive him for. And he's fighting this time, not quite in home turf, but he's fighting, someone in Bogdan Grad who's quite scrappy. He might be able to match the chaoticness of Naimov. Naimov's quite a chaotic kind of fighter. He likes to mix things up. He mixes it up on the feet. I mean, he's surprisingly entertaining for a fighter from that kind of background. Usually the boring grapplers. Naimov does try and throw. He does try and trade punches. He sometimes gets hurt for it. And Grad, he's kind of a similar type of fighter. Can wrestle but can also mix it in with the strikes. He can throw leg kicks quite effectively. And he's quite stocky, so he's one of them guys who can, carry power and he can catch you. And Nathaniel Wood obviously did a similar thing when he fought Naimov. So I do think he's definitely got a bit of jeopardy in this fight and could get hurt. The problem is, I just think if you're looking at both fighters, Naimov's just more technical, His takedown entries are a lot better than Grad. Grad tends to just use his raw power. He tends to use a lot of storming in and then just trying to force the takedown against the cage, whereas Naimov is better with those more technical takedowns where he grabs the leg and then can trip him. He can even do the body lock, get him taken down, or he can switch to the back effectively. I just think he's a better grappler. I see this fight being sloppy on the feet, and then once it hits the ground, whoever can get them takedowns is going to be the winner in this one. I think both of them are quite decent on the feet, but not anything special. So I think it's going to be dictated by who can get the takedowns and be effective in those grappling positions. I think Naimov's got the edge there, and I'm going to go with him in this one. I think he's going to get the win. I can see a late finish, maybe like a late third round finish for Naimov. I can see him getting Grad down, wearing on him, maybe landing a bit of ground and pound. I can see him trying to switch to the back, and then once that happens, I can see Grad trying to force a way up, and then I can so see Grad just getting flattened out, and then just getting punches to the side of the head, face down, and getting absolutely paggered with ground and pound. I can just see the fight ending that way. Because if there's one thing about Grad, he is someone who does try to make his way back to the feet. He doesn't like to stay there. He's pretty urgent when he's taken down in his last fight. I think he showed that quite a lot. And I think in this fight, he's going to really try and get up too quickly and then get flattened out while he's trying to make his way to his feet. I can see him getting caught, maybe one of his legs and the hook's being sunk in, and then him maybe just flattening him and just landing those shots to the side of the head. And I can see the fight ending that way late in the third. I just think Grad's not quite as tricky and quite as skillful on the ground. I think he's good at getting the takedowns, but he's just not got the grappling to keep anyone down. And I think Naimov has got that ability, and he'll get the finish in that position late in the third. Ground and pound finish for Naimov. Moving on. Fight number 2 on the main card. Nicholas Motta versus Nazim Sadikov. Motta literally got beat by Jim Miller not too long ago, so that's never a good sign. I mean, we saw what Chase Hooper did to Jim Miller recently. I mean, yeah, it was a boring performance, but he was so dominant in that fight. We've seen what Bobby Green did to Jim Miller. If you're losing to Jim Miller, you're not at that top level. And then when you add to that the fact he's lost to Urban Elliott, who's also fighting on this card on the prelims, unbelievably. Urban should be on the main card. I'm not happy about that. It shows you that, if you're losing to a Jim Miller at any time in the past 4 years, you're not that top level. I mean, Alex Hernandez even beat Jim Miller, for God's sake, and that was probably a more in prime Jim Miller than the one that beat Motta. So I can't pick him to beat Sadikov. Sadikov's just too good, man. He's got too much well-rounded, all-round technical skills. He's a very clean fighter to watch. Sadikov tends to throw a lot of body shots as well, and then he switches up to the head. That's how Urban Elliott knocked out Motta. So I could see literally a knockout coming on this early in this fight. The only problem is with that, I think, like, once you've been knocked out in a fight, how Motta did get knocked out against Urban, I can see him being a lot more technical and a lot more safe in this. So I can see him really trying to be a bit more tucked in, a bit more cautious, and I think he's going to probably stay in there. This might be the first decision of the night. I think he's probably just going to try and keep it at range. He's going to try and, with him being a short, stocky kind of fighter, he's probably going to try and use a lot of kicks, because when you're a shorter fighter, if you're going to be landing effective shots, you're going to have to go in the pocket. So I can see him trying to use his legs. He has got quite a big leg reach, so he's surprisingly long in the lower part of his body. He's like that Sean O'Malley kind of build / Chita Vera, you know, them weirdly long-legged fighters, a bit like Sean Woodson, except that he didn't look like an absolute mongoloid. So yeah, I can see him actually getting some leg kicks off early, and then I can see Sadikov slowly closing the range. And once Sadikov starts landing a few shots, I can see Motta just completely switching off, completely disengaging and just getting bullied in there. I think he will survive, but I think he's just going to get beaten up. Probably going to get taken down as well, but I think he's more likely going to just play it safe, protect himself. He's not going to try and, in the last fight, as I said, you know, getting up in that urgency of a Bogdan Grad. I feel like it's going to be the opposite. He's just going to try and stay safe, not get hurt, keep himself protected. And I think he's just going to be a pretty dull fight where he just gets beaten up methodically. I can't see it being a firework display kind of fight. It's just going to be a pretty boring decision, but I think he's going to get beat here by Sadikov, and I think it's going to probably be the least interesting fight on the main card. Moving on, 20, I'd say it's 30-27 there. I think it's going to be a comfortable victory for Sadikov, but he's not the most exciting fighter as it is, and I can't see Motta engaging as much as he has in the past, just because of the fact he's been knocked out brutally not too long ago. So he's going to have to come forward and just bully. Sadikov's going to have to bully Motta in there, I think, because he's not going to give him that shot that he gave to Urban. Moving on, next fight on the main card, Maciej Oroblai, one of my favourite fighters in the entire UFC, versus Tug Q Muzayev. Now, I had to read that very closely because I'm blind at the minute, but I can never pronounce these guys' name. I mean, I feel like at this point, they're all literally an alternative version of each other, these lower level kind of mountain dwellers. They all seem to fight the same, but Oroblai is the opposite. He's a literal caveman from another time. The guy he's fighting here, I feel like it's just an absolute simple bullying kind of thing where they just want Oroblai to... They're kind of rewarding him for that last fight, one of the fights of the years he had. I feel like he's getting a bit of a layup here. It's going to be a really, really brutal night for Muzayev. I think he's going to get beaten up. He's not on that level. He's kind of like one of these lower level Dagestani guys, you know, where he doesn't quite have the hype. He's kind of one of those who just has the wrestling but no aggressiveness to it, no like actual real way of putting damage on someone. He's one of these guys who just goes for position over kind of getting a finish, and I think he's going to really struggle in this fight because Oroblai is just like a freak. He's built like some kind of prehistoric caveman guy who even has the face of like... He's almost like he looks like Chinese Curtis Blades. I know he isn't Chinese, but he's got like... He looks like Shavkat Rakhmonov if he had Down syndrome. That's like the only description I could give for Oroblai. So yeah, I think he's just going to get really, really paggered, is Muzayev. I think he's going to get battered in this fight. It's going to be quite hilarious to watch because I think this is one of the biggest mismatches on the entire card, apart from the Urban Elliott fight. I think Urban Elliott's going to smash the other guy. But yeah, the guy called KO, you know, Urban's fighting, he's going to get knocked out pretty brutally. And I think this fight's going to end a similar way. I feel like he's going to get a brutal finish or a blind. I don't think it's going to be like a one and done, one punch knockout. I think it's going to be like a brutal, bloody 12-6 elbow, shots being rained down. He's probably going to even land a few like really bad damaging hammer fists. I can see it being one of those finishes where he's just getting absolutely beaten to death and then he's having to turn and protect himself, and then he's just getting paggered with shots to the back of the head, as we know, which are legal in the UFC. And he's just going to get beaten up here, unfortunately. Or fortunately, in my case, because I don't like these guys in the UFC. But yeah, he's going to get beaten up badly. I think Rountree is just an absolute savage. He's one of the most entertaining fighters in the UFC, in my opinion. And he's going to just get a brutal ground and pound stoppage here. I can see him possibly just getting a head and arm triangle as well. Maybe once he's hammered and properly caved in the head of Mavliev, I can see him getting that head and arm choke and just finishing him that way as well, because he's got an amazing grip strength. Rountree, he's got like that caveman inbred grip strength, and I can see him just squeezing the life out of Mavliev. So I'm going with a head and arm triangle finish, to be specific, and it's going to be in the first round. It's going to be the performance of the night on this main card. Moving on, fight number 4, I believe, on the main card. Curtis Blades versus Rusev Kuniev. Now, this might be the second biggest mismatch on this main card after the last fight. I think it's going to be a pretty simple night for Curtis Blades. He's just really looking locked in this week. We saw his comments about John Jones a few days ago, so I'm behind him all the way. I like Curtis Blades. He had a tough time out last time against Aspinall. People going about the time out Aspinall's had. Curtis Blades has been out as long. I think he's going to look good in this fight because he's had the time to recover from that brutal beating that he got. Like one of those proper bad ground and pound beatings like we just discussed. It was one of those in his last fight, so I think the time out's done him good. I think Blades is fighting a wrestler, obviously, so he's going to be able to really show that he's got that next level, that American wrestling that seems to be getting kind of looked and frowned down upon at the moment. But I feel like Curtis Blades is one of the better people at implementing that kind of wrestling. Like, he really does put the pressure on for a big guy. And he has half decent cardio as well, you know. He's never really fully gassed in fights, even though he's a big guy. You know, he's quite built compared to a lot of heavyweights as well. He's not got that fat, flabby build. He's got quite a solid base, so he can use that wrestling effectively. And I think in this fight, he's just going to be the better wrestler. Obviously, neither of them, if one of them's got any striking advantage, it's going to be Curtis Blades. But I think Blades, obviously, he's very one-dimensional with his striking. He doesn't have any kicks. He just throws the hands. He's a typical boxer wrestler, kind of that American wrestler with the overhand. He's that kind of guy. So he's going to really try and light up Kuniev on the feet because he has a massive advantage there. But he also has a massive advantage on the ground. I think from what I've seen of Kuniev, he's just a typical Dana White Contender Series mountain dweller, you know, where they just put him in the UFC because of his name, Kuniev. It ends with an Ev or a Chev or an Ev. So it means that they're going to get in the UFC a lot easier than anyone else. But yeah, he's been given a absolute, on the outside, an amazing opportunity. But I think he's going to end up ruining the day that he got matched up with Blades, because I think he could get a really bad beating in this fight. Curtis Blades is looking locked in. I think he's probably going to try and land one early on Kuniev because he's going to have that UFC debut jitters. He's going to obviously be really in the spotlight as well because he's on the main card in his debut. I mean, that doesn't happen often unless you're actually a big star coming into the UFC. So it's just Dagestani privilege yet again. But yeah, I think he's going to get absolutely destroyed in this fight. I could see it maybe going to the second simply because these Dagestani / whatever you want to call them, mountain Dagestani inbreds, that they tend to really not like to engage when they're getting beaten or when they're in a fight where they're above in over the head. They're not warrior gened kind of guys, so they will just wrap up in a ball. So I could see him making it to the second, and then Blades maybe finally getting him that exhausted that he can land some really damaging shots against the fence. I could see Blades finishing him there because I think, you know, even though he's a better wrestler, he isn't necessarily the best submission artist, so I can see him struggling to finish Kuniev, but I think he will finish him on the feet in this fight. I think it'll just be from exhaustion, and Blades will land that lethal blow on the cage. He'll probably land a shot to the head, maybe an uppercut. I can see a shovel uppercut being the punch that gets him the win here because people like Kuniev, we know that they like to sniff the crotch, so he's probably going to have an opening there to land that uppercut. And I think once he lands that, it's going to be game over, because these guys, once they're not able to get their own way in the grappling, they just tend to give up. So I can see him getting finished brutally by blades against the fence with a shovel uppercut, to be specific. I'm giving you all the specific predictions here. I'm trying to be the Nostradamus of the UFC prediction here. So I'm going to go with a shovel uppercut, to be precise. And I'm going to go with blades, landing that, and then him crumbling on his knees and just getting hit with a few follow-ups, and that's the end. And I think it'll come in the second round after he's been thoroughly out-wrestled. Not in any danger, just exhausted from getting absolutely freestyled on the ground by blades, and then he's going to get beaten in the second by an uppercut, and he's going to get crumbled to the canvas with 2 follow-up shots, to be specific, and then he's going to probably get another main card slot in one of these Abu Dhabi cards, because that's what the UFC do. Moving on to the co-main event of the evening. An amazing co-main event. Rafael Fiziev, one of my favourite guys in the UFC. Honestly, absolutely love the guy. And he's going up against Ignacio Bahamondes. Now, if you're wondering why I had to look down there, because Bahamondes, I can't believe he's actually back already after his most recent fight. He literally destroyed Jerlin in the last fight. Great submission. Those long legs came in handy there. And he was facing another kind of guy with that kind of weird lanky build. So now he's facing a little stocky Chad. A little stocky Kazakhstani Chad. Even though people make out he's Azerbaijani, he's actually from Kazakhstan. But he's fighting in his hometown, I suppose. But Fiziev looked good in his last fight against Gaethje, man. And Ignacio looked good as well. We could potentially be looking at 2 top 8/top 7 lightweights here, man. Because both guys are very high level, even in one of the best divisions in the UFC. In any other division, these two would be like top 3, top 5. The lightweight division is the hardest division in the UFC. And these two are 2 of the best in that division, I'm telling you, man. There's not many people I'd pick to beat Bahamondes. And even though Gaethje, who I think's overrated, beat Fiziev in his last fight, Fiziev took that on short notice, man. And in the first fight, I think there's an argument Fiziev could have got a draw. You know, that first round, he dominated Gaethje in London. And obviously Gaethje as well, with that takedown at the end, I feel like he just edged that round. That could have been a 9-9 round if people actually gave rounds like that, but they don't. So I'm really thinking that Fiziev could get the win here. I think Fiziev's just really underrated, and Bahamondes may have looked impressive in his last fight and got the early finish, but I think these are both 2 high-level guys. But I think the stockier guy fighting at home, who's also got more main event experience, and he's also got more high-level matches in the past. He's fought people like Gaethje, he fought Prime Bobby Green. He's fought some of the best, you know what I mean? He fought Moicano. You know, he's a good fighter. So I think he's really going to do well in this fight. I think he's going to get the victory. He's one of the better strikers in the UFC. And by better strikers, what I mean by that is, unlike in my earlier fight I was discussing where it's just boxing heavy with Curtis Blades, Fiziev uses all those weapons, elbows, he uses all of the limbs, knees. He's really impressive on the feet, man, and he's great to watch. And I think he's going to light up Bahamondes here with quick in and out movement. And I think he's just too overwhelming for these lanky guys. Like, he's faced this style before, and he's very overwhelming to that kind of style. And I think he's going to have a really good night here. I think he's going to be able to light up Bahamondes, because unlike Gaethje, he's fighting a more lanky, more of a rangy fighter, not someone who likes to get in the pocket. So he's going to be basically he's going to be a stylistic heaven for Fiziev, in my opinion. I think he's going to shock a lot of people with how easily he does this, and there's going to be a lot of hype once again around his name. So I think he's going to get a decision here. I think it's going to be a good fight, because I do think he'll have his moments, Bahamondes, but I think it's going to come down to the fact that Fiziev is just more seasoned, and he's also, in his last fight, got a lot of experience in he was the co-main event of one of the biggest fight cards of the year so far. So it's really good to see that he's going to be fighting again so soon. Bahamondes fought on the same card, but I feel like Fiziev he's been looked up under the radar too much, in my opinion, just because he's lost a couple. So I'm going with Fiziev. he's way past that injury he got a few years ago, and I think he's going to come back stronger than ever, and he's going to get a decision win against Bahamondes. 29-28. I think he may lose the middle round, but the first round I think he's probably going to win just using his superior striking. I think Bahamondes might in the second round warm up a bit because he'll get used to the movement of Fiziev, but I think in the third Fiziev's going to start just styling on him with kicks and elbows and more clinch work for that Muay Thai background, and I think he'll win the decision. Moving on to the main event of the evening, Jamal Hill versus Khalil Rountree. Now this fight obviously meant to happen back in April. I think this is one of the best main events in the past couple of years the UFC have had in a fight night. I think this is the most excited I've probably been since earlier this year, Israel Adesanya versus fucking Dagestani French guy, Naimov, right? This is another Naimov. So I think it's going to be a really good fight. I can see him really doing well with his really newfound Muay Thai skills. You know, I was just discussing Fiziev. Khalil's been training with some Muay Thai fighters recently. He trained with Liam Harrison. A lot of people have been saying that, you know, that's going to help him a lot because he's going to be even more crisp with those knees that he started to use in his Pereira fight. We'd never really seen as much of that from Khalil before. He's really starting to become, as Fiziev, as a fully like compact striker with using all the limbs, whereas Jamal is pretty much just a boxer who throws a leg kick now and again. His movement's amazing, but watch that Glover Teixeira fight back. He literally just threw punches, and I think if you're fighting someone who's also a great striker but uses more tools and they're both strikers at heart, I think you've got to go with a more rounded striker. Neither of these guys are going to wrestle. It's going to be a stand-up fight. I'm going with a kickboxer / Muay Thai style fighter, and I'm going to go with the guy who's also been at the higher level and look better at that level. I mean, look at Khalil in his latest performances against Anthony Smith, the legend, as we know, the fetal guard master Anthony Smith, and the other master, Pereira, the guy who Anthony Smith could clearly beat, you know, as he likes to tell us. So I think that it's been a really slow rise for Rountree, but the Jacoby robbery maybe made people think he was overrated, but then he come with that Smith performance, and obviously people just meme on Smith. But then that Pereira performance was unbelievable, and he's had the correct amount of time off. Jamal Hill is the opposite. He's not took any time off since the Pereira comeback. I think he's going to get overwhelmed here by just strikes coming at too many different angles. What does Yeri do? Throws strikes at odd angles. What does Khalil do? Throws strikes at odd angles. He throws strikes that you don't really see coming. He did it to Anthony Smith. And when you're throwing kicks and shots with your hands at the same time, a la Jiri Prochazka, you know, they tend to throw that kick and then they'll throw the punch almost instantaneously. Very Muay Thai kind of style. The stance is a bit weird as well compared to that orthodox boxing stance. And I think that Hill is just too crisp, if that makes sense. Yeri was too wild for Hill. I feel like Hill thrives when he faces people who are a bit more orthodox. When he fights the Yeris of the world and the Pereiras, who's also from a kickboxing background, I feel like he struggles, man. When he fights people like Paul Craig, who has no striking, or he fights a Glover Teixeira with no striking, or in fact it's a Johnny Walker who is unorthodox but has kind of like that very bad chin, as well as he also tends to not have his chin covered. So that's why people picked Hill in the past against Yuri, because they thought Johnny Walker's got that similar style. People forget that Johnny Walker only lost that fight because he has no chin. He actually was looking decent at points in that fight. The best performance Hill ever had was literally probably his performance against Glover and when he won the belt, and that was the only fight where I actually think he's looked world class. He obviously lost to Paul Craig, and he's lost to other people who aren't really at that level in the past. So I feel like he's going to really struggle in this fight against Khalil, who's really got the all-round striking ability. And he's also, people forget, very, very aggressive. People think Khalil's this real laid-back guy. He's got... Hill, if anything, personality-wise, you'd think he's the aggressive guy. In the octagon, Hill is very laid-back and clean. Khalil has that really vicious, like, killer instinct. I mean, we saw the Fortnite-style emerge he did on Smith. That was very, very uncalled for, in my opinion. You know, Smith's, you know, literally retarded at this point, and he's getting emerted on. He's probably, like, still seeing flashes of the breaking, and, you know, he's got Khalil Rountree like that over him. So it's not good to think that just because Hill seems like the more aggressive guy personality-wise, that he's going to be the aggressor in this fight. I think people forget that Khalil is very vicious when he throws shots. He's done that against many opponents in the past. He was a dog in that Pereira fight. He was a dog in his Smith fight. He was a dog in the Jacoby fight. So I think he's going to do well here with his aggressive striking and his elbows and his kicks. And I think he's probably going to finish this fight with some kind of sequence where he's throwing knees to the body and then elbows, similar to how he got finished by Pereira. I think he's going to do a mirror of that, but it's going to be him getting the finish, and it's going to be very story-like, and it's going to be a fairy tale finish for him, and he's going to kind of get a bit of revenge because he's going to finish the fight in a similar way to how he got finished, in my opinion. Thanks for watching, guys. Horn MMA 13, just to confirm, third round finish for Khalil through knees and elbows. I think Jamal's going to be crumbled. He's going to get beaten convincingly with just an all-round better striker, in my opinion. I think Fiziv's going to get a finish, as I've said. No, sorry, he's going to get a decision, but I think Curtis Blades is going to get a finish by a shovel uppercut, similar to against the fence, but I feel like it's going to be an uppercut. Khalil, it'll be down to knees to the body and elbows. And I think, obviously, the only other finish on the card will be the Orably fight. I think it's going to be a brutal ground and pound, side of the head. Then he's going to get an head and arm choke. So 3 finishes on this card, and I think other two fights are going to go to decision, being the Fiziv fight and the what was the other fight? Nazim. Yeah, the Nazim fight, I think that's going to be a finish as well. So the 4th fight as well is going to be a finish. I think that one's obviously going to come by brutal elbows. And he's going to get the decision, obviously, in the fight, Nazim. That's the other decision in this card. But he's going to really try and finish the fight. Naimov is going to win, I think. And I think he's going to do it really dominantly. So all the Dagestanis are going to win, unfortunately. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed, and thanks for tuning in.